What's up YouTube? How's everybody doing? Alright, today I got a video for you where I'm going to show you guys how I clean my Stihl MS460 and pretty much any of my power saws that I have. This is the first professional saw that I purchased. I bought this back in I think 2009 if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember exactly the year, but it's been a really good saw. It's by far my favorite saw, and I really like the power to weight ratio on this saw. But anyhow, this is how I go about cleaning and maintaining my saws. First thing that I do is I check my chain. So I'll go through and I'll just run it through, and I do this with all my chains, but I look at all the teeth on it and see if there's any of them that are chipped or broken or anything like that. Check for wear on your straps and your links and all that kind of stuff. Alright, so then what I'm going to do then is I'll just take the bar and chain off of it. I already got that backed off all the way. So pull off my side cover. Then I'll take the chain and I'll just run it back over the sprocket, set the bar down here, and what I like to do with the chains is I like to take a brush and I'll just go through and all the drive links on there, I'll just brush them off quick. I like to brush the chain itself where the cutters are, so if there's any dirt and debris in the cutters and whatever. Alright, and I just kind of fold the chain up like that. Okay, the next thing I'll do is I'll look at my bar. Now what I'm looking for is I'm trying to see if there's any premature wear or any kind of, wear on the bar itself. And the wear, what you're looking for is on the channel here where the drivers run through. If you don't flip your bars, what you'll end up having is the two metal sides here on each side will be they'll get a groove in it, and then what'll end up happening when you do that is your chain will actually, when you start cutting through a log, it's going to start curving on you, and you're going to wonder why it's doing that. So it's always a good idea to maintain your bars, and if they do start doing that, this one's starting to do it just a little bit down here. You can see, I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but there's a little bit of a groove right here where you can see a little bit of a lip edge. So what you generally want to do with that is you can take a file, you can use a sander. They make regular bar dressers that you can buy, and you can do what's called dressing a bar, which is just you kind of sand that down or get that material to go down so that everything's flat and even all the way along. So I'll take my brush then and I'll just brush everything off. I'll kind of run it down through the channel and the bar, and I'll check the sprocket on the nose, and if that's not rolling real nice and smooth, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take brake clean, and only in the bars that I have that are steel like this that you don't grease the tips on them, I will run brake clean. And if you got to grease the tip in them, I won't do that. Or if I do that, I'll spray it down with brake clean and then I'll let it dry and then I'll grease the tip again. But this one's rolling pretty good, so I'm going to leave it alone. Okay, the next thing I'll do is I take a putty knife, it fits right down in there, and then I just run that right down the channel, and I like to get all the sediments and all the stuff that's all gunked up in there from the bar oil and the wood chips and everything that got in there from the wood dust from cutting and whatever, and I'll just run that down through, and when you get down to the bottom you can see it'll come right out of the bottom there, just like that. I'll run that down through on both sides, and then what I also do then is, I mentioned it in previous video, but right here is where your bar oil goes through, and it's on both sides of the bar. Every bar has that, and I'll go through and I'll blow it out like that, or you can take your air compressor and you can blow it out. I'll just take a rag then and I'll just kind of wipe it down a little bit. And a lot of times I can actually just get that groove to go out just by blowing in it like that. But sometimes I do have it stuff get in there and it's pretty stubborn, and I'll end up having to take a pick, and I'll have to go in there and push it out with a pick and get anything out of there. So next thing that I do is I take and brush any of these dirt sediments and brush it out like that. Get as much out of there as you can get with the brush. So I'll do that, and then a lot of times I'll throw on my safety glasses then, and I'll take my air compressor. I find that it works really well for cleaning this stuff out. Another thing that you can inspect at this time is your chain guides. Inspect those, make sure they're not wearing real bad, or there's any damage to them or anything. You can pop them off. Usually you take your fingernail and get underneath them like that. They just sit inside the little groove right here. If you have felling dogs on yours like I have on this one, I just go through and I look at those, make sure they're not cracked or any kind of problems with them. And then what you can do, you don't have to, but you can take this is a Windex bottle that I filled up with Dawn dish soap and some regular water, and I'll just spray it in there. Now that's just soapy water, so I filled this one up with just regular water so that way I can rinse it off. Then I'll just take my rag and just wipe that off. Get as much out of there as you can. And then again, you can take your air compressor, just kind of blow it in there. I like to get down in the grooves where the chain guides are sitting, so you can get all the junk out of there. Same thing with the chain guides, I'll just wipe them down. And there you go. Clutch cover, clean. Next thing I do is I'll take the saw and I will brush off this entire area here. All around the clutch drum and the sprocket. Be careful, try not to get any stuff down in your oiler here, because this is where the oil comes out, and you're not going to want to brush a bunch of stuff down in there or have it go in and plug up your oiler on you. Again, I'll just take a shop towel or something, and I'll run that on it quick. Good thing to do is to try and get down in where the clutch drum is. If you're not going to take off your clutch drum, just try and get around it as best you can. I recommend taking it off when you clean it. I would definitely try doing that every time you do this. The reason being is because you'd be amazed at how much stuff gets in behind that clutch, and then what'll end up happening is all that sediment will get in behind there, and it'll get in between your clutch and your clutch drum, and it can actually wear things out. It'll wear a groove in there, and it'll wear out your clutch drum a lot quicker. So once I get that done, then I'll take my air compressor again, the nozzle, and I'll just blow out a lot of the stuff in this area and in here and around there. Okay, another good thing to do at this time is to inspect your sprocket. Just look at it, see if it's wearing kind of funny at all or anything like that. Make sure the channels in your sprocket are looking pretty good. And you can take soapy water again. Again, I'm going to plug up that channel there for the oiler. I just kind of spray it on there. And then I'll take my bottle of water, just plain water, spray that off quick. Use my rag. And wipe that off. Another thing I do is this screw right here. There is a guide plate that's held on by that screw. I want to take and take that screw off. It should just pop right off of here, just like that. Then I just take a shop towel, and you can see all the stuff that's in behind there. I just like to wipe that stuff off. And then you can see in the adjuster, just kind of inspecting the adjuster and see if there's a bunch of stuff. A lot of times there'll be a bunch of stuff packed down in there. This is another time where I like to take the brush and I'll just kind of brush it out of there. Or you can take your air compressor again. Be mindful of the oiler, but I'm covering that little opening up, and then okay, this is also a good time to check your clutch brake. See that it's functioning properly and there's isn't any cracks or anything in it. Alright, next thing I'll do is I am going to take off the circlip. So I'm going to take my sprocket off and I'm going to take my clutch drum out, and I'm actually going to clean the inside of the clutch drum, and I'll blow in behind the clutch itself. Just be careful, because like I said, these can come flying off on you. So there's a retainer washer that goes underneath that circlip, and then you've got your sprocket. You just pull that off. And like I said, what you're looking for is you're looking to check the grooves out, make sure there isn't any real bad wear. Okay, then the clutch drum, you just pull it out, and this is what I'm talking about. All this stuff gets in back underneath and behind that clutch drum. So you just want to take a rag of some kind and just wipe it out, because this gets warm and it actually will seat in there and get really hard and crusty. You'll have to actually scrape it out. You can use a brush, you know, like a metal brush of some kind, or if you don't have that, you can just use your scrunch and just kind of lightly go over it, knock off all the sediments that are built up on the outer ring of it. Now this is something, if I'm going to spray anything on it, I would definitely spray brake clean on this. I set that down, and then there's a needle bearing on here, and I'll just kind of look at that, make sure that there isn't anything plugged up in it that's causing any wear on your bearings, your roller bearings at all on there. And then I'll take my air compressor again, and I'll blow inside the clutch area. I'll just take a rag and kind of wipe in there and wipe around it. Just kind of inspect the clutch. Make sure everything looks good, your springs are good, and nothing's cracked or broken or anything like that. Alright, what you can do if you want to, I don't do this when I clean my saws. I will do this in another video when I actually replace the parts on it. I've got a couple of parts for making this oiler a high output oiler, and I'm going to do another video on that here. It'll probably be my next video or maybe the video after that. But you can take your clutch off, and then you can get in behind there and you can clean all the stuff behind your clutch and around your oiler and all that kind of stuff, because your oiler actually sits behind your clutch. But I don't normally do that when I'm just generally cleaning and maintaining stuff. Is I'll take some grease, and what you'll want to do every now and again is take a little bit of grease and run it onto your drive shaft here where your needle bearing runs on there, so that it doesn't get too warm, and it helps your needle bearings to get lubricated. You don't need, you know, a ton of it on there. I just usually just do a light coating on it, and then I'll just take the bearing and put it back on there. Then you take your clutch drum. Now on your clutch drum, there is a groove or a notch marked out in your clutch drum. That notch needs to line up with, there's a worm gear behind your clutch that drives your oiler, and it has a little metal tab that comes out. If you take a flashlight or any kind of light that you have and look down in here, you'll catch where it is. Okay, next thing you got to do then is put your sprocket back on, and then you'll put your retaining washer back on. Then put your circlip back in. Now this is where this can get kind of tricky. I like to hold it with 2 fingers, and I'll just kind of press on it and pop it in there. Hopefully you don't shove your scrunch down into your finger. But make sure that that seats down into that groove, the tabs of your circlip. If you do not do that, what will end up happening is when you start your saw up, after you get it all barred up with a chain and a bar, and you tighten everything down and you fire it up, as soon as that starts to spin around, you're going to end up having your circlip fly off of there. Ask me how I know. Alright, then what I'll do is I'll just go through and do one more final blow off with the air compressor. Good and snug, and just a little bit past and you're good. Okay, put them down quick like that. And then I'll take off my air cover. I'll just blow that out. Okay, take your air filter off, and I'll blow that out from the inside out. Just kind of look at everything, make sure that this little strap that goes over is not wearing out. I like to take that off. You can see all that stuff that gets underneath there. Okay, and put that back on. Okay, a lot of times I'll just set that down inside here. I like to pull off this rubber stop and blow that out. And then I'll also go through and all the dirt and stuff from inside around here. You don't want to blow a bunch of stuff down into your carburetor, down into your intake. So just again, be mindful of that. And come around in between your fuel tank and your casing, and around your oil cap. I'm going to pull off my cover, and I'm going to blow inside where the flywheel is. I'm also going to pull the top cover off, and I'm going to actually blow down in on the fins around the cylinder. Okay. So to take the top cover off, I believe this is a T27 Torx wrench, but there's a screw here, and there's 1 and 2 screws there. First thing you want to do is pull the boot off for your spark plug. Just pull that off, and then take your spark plug out. Okay, then you take your Torx wrench and undo the screw here. It's usually a good idea. If you have one, to use some kind of a tray. I like these magnetic trays you get from Harbor Freight. All right, okay, and just inspect this heat shield. This was what I was talking about in the video that I did of the comparison between the G660 and the MS660. On the G660, it has this aluminum heat shield, and that glue was letting go, and this heat shield was actually coming out from underneath it. Now, I'd like to blow the fins out, but when you do that, you're going to want to take your spark plug and put it back down in your cylinder so that you don't blow any sediments down inside your cylinder. So don't forget to do that. If you don't want to take your side cover off, at this point would be a good point or good time to get into your fins of your flywheel. They got a stick here. Managed to wedge its way down in between the heat shield for the muffler and the front of the cylinder. It's also a good time to go ahead and check out and make sure that your cylinder bolts are tight and nothing's coming loose. We'll get down in underneath the muffler and okay. Take your starter cover off, the bolt here, the bolt here, and then two on the bottom. Funny story about this saw. The first time I used this saw, the first tree I ever cut down in my life, I put in my face cut and I went to do my back cut, and I didn't know anything about cutting trees. I was just learning how to do it, and the show Axemen was out, and I really liked that show, so I was watching that a lot, and I went out to cut a tree, and it was just a small tree. It was only about that big, and I went to cut it, and I made my face cut, and I did the back cut, and it sat down on the bar and pinched my saw, and I couldn't get it out. So what I ended up doing, instead of, and this is a tip for a lot of you new people, guys, girls, whoever, kids, anybody that's going to use a saw, if you have the option and that happens to you to get a second saw, don't just grab the saw and try going just above the saw that's already sitting there and cut. Take your scrunch and take the power head off of the bar before you cut the tree down again. Or what will happen to you is what happened to me, and the tree, once you do that, will start going, and it'll twist and turn, and it'll flop right on top of your saw. So when that happened, it broke here, here. That's the old one. Busted my handle, and it cracked up here, and it broke the chain brake. I had to get a new chain brake. The Stihls, the 460s came and it had a white and yellow sticker on. That's why this one's got a green one. But humility. That'll keep you humble. That's why I tell you guys these things. But as you can see, it's still got a crack there. It still works, so I didn't worry about replacing that. But just a little tip for you. All right, you can check out your recoil now at this point if you want. Just make sure that it's going good and there's nothing plugging anything up in there. You know, check your rope out. This one's actually starting to wear a bit, so I may end up replacing that sooner than later. We'll see how that turns out, but wipe everything down. And then blow in here. Alright, now you can get as picky as you want to with that, with this part of it, but I'll just go through and just get the heavy bulk of stuff out of there is what I'm looking to do. And alright guys, I think I'm going to put this back together and then I'll be back. I don't want to bore you with having to show you guys exactly how I put all this stuff back together. It's the same deal. You put it back together the same way you took it apart. Just remember what bolt goes where. If you have to, take a picture of how they were when you took them out of there or whatever. Or however you got to do it to remember it. A lot of times I like to put the bolts, you know, in a certain pattern when I put them on my magnetic tray, so that way they are laying the way that I took them off and I can kind of figure out what slot they were supposed to go in or whatever. But it's pretty simple. It's not that difficult. Alright guys, there you have it. Saw's all back together. It's all cleaned up and ready for use again. That's how I clean mine. That's how I maintain my saws. It's also a good idea when you go through and clean them like that. Just check all your bolts or your fasteners and stuff like I said. Make sure everything's good and tight. One thing I did forget to mention was I like to blow out the inner side of the saw. There's a lot of stuff that'll get up underneath here, and it just, you know, from the chain coming back around, it drags a lot of stuff and blows it up in by where your oiler adjustment screw is, which some of you might not know what that is. That's on the bottom here. There's an adjustment screw on the Stihl saws where you take your carb adjusting screwdriver and you stick it in there, and you can turn it up to give you more oil on your bar and chain, or less oil on your bar and chain, depending on what size bar and chain you run. So anyhow guys, sorry about the length of the video. I just wanted to show a lot of you guys what I do to maintain my saw, and let some of you that aren't real familiar with saws or that are a little intimidated about taking stuff apart on them or whatever, know that it's really not that big of a deal, and show you that, you know, you can take some of the stuff apart and you don't have to worry about, you know, if you're going to break something or whatever. Try to stay away from power tools, or at least I do anyway. Any battery powered drills or anything like that, I usually just try and use hand tools, so that way I don't actually strip something out or break it. That'd be about my only recommendation on anything. But anyhow, let me know in the comments if you guys have any tips or tricks or whatever on your saws, if there's any special cleaners that you guys use to maintain your saws with and get them cleaned up and whatever. And I guess if you want to see more of this kind of stuff, give me a like and subscribe, and if you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down and let me know in the comments of what you didn't like about it or what you think I did wrong or whatever. So alrighty guys, take care and thanks for watching.